Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is you are listening to this. It is me, your commissioner. And if it's Wednesday night, that means alongside me I have Big Nolski. How you doing tonight, Noel?
Doing well. How are you, sir?
I'm always doing well. At least I try to be. And tonight is no exception. I'm doing fantastic. Let's dive right into this busy week. Congratulations, Noel. You are MVP. What a week for you. I was a hard fought game, and as I mentioned last week in the preview of the games last week, I was anticipating you would win, and I was part cheering for you because I was cheering against Brandon because he's doing so well in my own personal division, but it was also because I really wanted you to get a win, and boy, did you. Not only did you get a win, but you won by 0.3 points. That stings. But the rubbing the salt in the wound for that is that you gave Brandon the EB award. And for those of you who don't recall, the EB means everybody but. And so Brandon would have beaten everybody but Noel this week. It's the only time when the second place person loses to the first place person. No fun. So I'm sorry, Brandon, about that. Congratulations, Noel, on your first MVP of the season.
Thank you. I was very happy to see that. And to Brandon, I told him this already. Great game. I was constantly thinking that this would be overturned because of a scoring adjustment. Because as I texted the screenshots to Mike on Sunday night, showing Russell Wilson may have registered a catch from himself, so maybe it took that away. I don't know, but I was very happy. So thank you.
Awesome. All right, no, you're very welcome. Let's go on to the MVP. This was Matt Forte, and it was a real close one this week. If you look across the Mile High Champions League, actually, let me focus on Forte first. He had 30 attempts, which is a lot, for 100 yards and a touchdown. So he got 43 points. Where it was close this week was the fact that the Eagles' defense got 42 and a half. Melvin, they Melvined me. It is Melvin. I thought it was Marvin for a second. Melvin Gordon got 42 points. LeGarrette Blount got 42 points. It was just there's a whole lot of 42-point games that could have got the MVP, but ultimately it was Matt Forte for Josh's team that ended up getting that 43 points, and it got him another win. So congratulations to Matt Forte. Congratulations to Josh on that one. Let's move on to Shithead of the Week, Noel. Who has been shitty enough the last week to earn this prize?
Well, as we talked about last week, it's not just, all week. It's pretty much all the time. It's going to go to Roger Goodell this week, not only for once again mishandling a domestic violence case and looking like a complete moron in the process and getting called a stooge by the King County Sheriff, but I'll send Mike a link so he can post this in the preview or the podcast. But he was interviewed this week about kind of the current state of the NFL. I don't know if you guys all saw it, but the ratings are down. And rather than going into too deep, because I'll try to keep this brief, he was asked about, what's the deal with such, stringent rules on what players wear and touchdown celebrations, and is that really should that be their focus when domestic violence seems to be a bigger problem? And he blamed that on the public's misunderstanding of the issues. And it's just a wonderful interview of him denying reality while at the same time saying the fans are stupid and that the game is fine. So. And it's also full of wonderful corporate speak. So I'll go ahead and we'll make sure you get that posted so you can all find out just how terrible this man continues to be.
Yeah, he's I don't like him. I just don't. I begrudgingly respect where he's got the NFL for where it was even just a decade ago to where it is today. But that's the only thing. That's the only praise I will ever give him. So that's a good one, Nolan. That could be the weekly shithead of the week for pretty much the rest of the season until he stops being commissioner of the NFL. So, all right, thank you for that, Noel. Let's go on to the previews. Excuse me, I'm retarded. The reviews of the week, and we start with your game, Noel. We were talking about the big win for you, 167.8, 167.5 for Brandon. You had a great week across the board. Melvin Gordon got 42 points. You had 18 points from your kicker. That's insane. You got 32 from Bell. You got 22 from a guy that I thought was really funny because at one point you're like, who the heck is Jack Doyle? When I had him on my team as a substitute tight end, and he got you 22 points. The only really sad thing was Russell Wilson, who got 14.8 points, and I suppose a catch to himself. I don't know that would have been corrected as of this morning had it not been. Brandon had a great game all around. The only real disappointing thing was the Texans' D that got just stomped by Denver, getting him only 3.5 points. But A.J. Green is throwing my comments back in my face. He got 33 points this week, 20 points for Devonta Freeman, 28 for T.Y. Hilton. C.J. Anderson had a great game, 31 points, and then 32 points for sleeper Kirk Cousins. So, yeah, it was a tough game for Brandon. It sucks losing no matter what. If it's 1 point or 1,000 points, it sucks to lose. But this is a particularly stinging game for him. The upshot for him is that he's still number one in the Mountain Conference. So if the playoffs were to start today, he'd be going as the representative from the Mountain Conference, and he's doing well. He and Larson are tied at 4-3, but he has more points than he does by about 60 or so. So he should have no problem as if he can continue in this way of winning. So that's your game. Congratulations, Noel. You are now. You're welcome. You're tied for third in the Pacific Conference. Charlie's slowly pulling ahead there, 4-3. Kenfield is 3-4. Then you're tied with Vanessa at 2-5. And if you keep this up, both of you needed a win. Both of you got it. That's what I'm saying. You never know. Playoffs are coming around the corner. So good game. Let's go on to my game, and feel free to go nuts on my team, Noel.
I'll try to be nice. Excuse me. Great game for Molly here, especially when you consider the fact that sorry, I just got clawed by a cat. Damn it. When you consider the fact that two of her players had 2 points each, and she still had 153.3 points. So that's fantastic. And a lot of that came on the back of her workhorse, who is David Johnson, and just destroying it. Stop attacking me, damn it. She's going after my headphone cable. But also, she benefited from playing two Cincinnati players who were playing a Cleveland team that just can't seem to buy a win. And I don't know if you saw this or not, Mike, but Hugh Jackson actually took off his headset for the last few minutes of the game because he didn't want to be involved in the game at all. So he stopped doing play calling, just let the game go on. That's how frustrated he is. And as that was an unintentional segue to get to your team here. This was just, I don't know, apart from Brian Hoyer breaking his arm in that Thursday night game, what the hell has happened to Jordan Howard? He's just fallen off a cliff. 4 points. Jordy Nelson, some of my Packers crazies are talking about the fact that we need to trade him. He's washed up, which if he's washed up, no one's going to take him. And then, other than that, I think you probably weren't expecting much from Cameron Brate. And so 5 is probably all right. Allen Robinson has been a vast disappointment this year, as has Brandon Marshall for the most part. But upside, Eagles defense, just, I was watching that game. I don't know what the hell is wrong with both teams, but they just had a fantastic game. They also had a kick return for a touchdown, and that always adds up points. And then the immortal Adam Vinatieri, kind of, I would say, a disappointing week, even for 10, with 10 points this week. But he's done you better most weeks, I think. But I think you'll bounce back and do better next week. But great win for Molly.
Yeah, congrats, Molly. That was a really good win for you. I wasn't expecting to win this week. But, it's always just when you don't cross that 100-point mark, it's like you lose and then somebody steps on your balls while you're down. So thank you for that, Noel. Let's go to Josh and Vanessa. Josh, as we kind of mentioned from the MVP, gave her somewhat of a walloping. And so forgive me, I said that she won this week. She actually lost. She's on a 3-game losing streak. It's just Josh's second win in as many weeks. Great game again by Drew Brees. He's again, like Adam Vinatieri, proving to be fairly immortal here in his old age. He's still putting up tons of points. Frank Gore got him 25, another guy who seems to be immortal. DeAndre Hopkins and Antonio Gates, both disappointing at 8. But Forte, 43 points. Anytime your player gets you above 30, you're very likely going to win. When they get above 40, game over. Chris Ivory, unless the rest of your team sucks, like mine does. Chris Ivory getting 11 points is not too shabby, but the Seahawks at 21 points, that's really nice, especially against a Arizona team who was a favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. So that's seems like it's a far-fetched dream now. Vanessa had just a rough week because Stephon Diggs, Travis Kelce, Terrell Pryor, and her kick and Steven Hauschka all got single digits. So between the four of them, they got 16 points. That was made up in spades by just his Seahawks defense. So that's never going to do well. Matty Ice seems to be coming back a little bit after that big 52-point game. He's been 18 points, 32 points, 18 points, which I guess against Green Bay suggests he's going to do north of 30 this week. But that's kind of some of the things that happens with him. Sometimes he's inconsistent. So tough loss for Vanessa here. She will need to continue to win here to stand a chance at 2-5 with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 5 games left, and in those 5 games, she probably have to win all of them to stand a chance to stay in the playoff contention. But I am, like I said, ad nauseum, an eternal bull. So I think that that's always a possibility, and I'll always be cheering for the underdog. So congratulations, Josh. Rough game, Vanny. Better luck next week. Let's go to Ben and Courtney.
Woohoo! My basement buddy also got a win. Courtney is now 2-5 with me, and a big win over a good team in Ben's Castle Black Knights watch, who aren't seeing a pattern so far this week. If you had a lot of players in single digits, you probably didn't win. And Ben had that seemingly across the board, apart from 42-point performance from LeGarrette Blount, who's very quietly one of the best fantasy players, I would say, probably in the league. 24.6 points from Stafford's it's kind of a step back from what he's been doing week to week. 22 points from Mark Ingram, which you'd hope to get. But then Alshon Jeffrey still struggling with that bad quarterback situation, getting 6 points. Dennis Pitta, 8 points. The one that really, really surprised me this week was a Buffalo Bills defense going up against a sputtering Miami Dolphins offense with stupid Ryan Tannehill at quarterback and getting shredded. If you told me Ben was going to get 4.5 points this week from the Bills defense, I would have laughed at you. I would have thought at least 9 points, double digits was probably more probable here, but 118 points, not bad, but wasn't enough for the win, and those single digits are going to kill you. And to Courtney's game, it was just kind of, I would say, well-rounded apart from her kicker, 33.8 points from her quarterback, and Tyrod Taylor. Todd Gurley still not having a monster game, but 20 points, not bad. 30 points from Randall Cobb. He just had himself a game. I think, Mike, did I see you picked up Ty Montgomery?
Hell yeah.
I think those wide receivers that are also going to play some running back for Green Bay are going to get some points. I loved the start of Vernon Davis. I kind of wanted him, but I forgot about it until it was too late. Macklin, still a disappointment, but 8 points, not bad in a flex spot. Kevin Coleman, quietly doing his thing. Cardinals defense, great start. Just kickers, but you can't all get 18 points from your kicker because that's just ridiculous. So great job, Courtney. And Ben, I still like you going forward, but here's hoping for better luck next week with getting your players out of that single digits horror.
Yeah, that's never fun. I loathe seeing the single digit games now on anybody's team. It's just not fun. And I'm trying to maximize the amount of fun in the Mile High Champions League. Let's go to Charlie and Kenfield. Charlie walloped Kenfield 160.8 to 80.4. I will say this, as commissioner, I'm going to award 24 points to Kenfield's team. I take responsibility for not substituting Mike Wallace in for Eddie Lacy. Kenfield fighting the hyper pirates that he's fighting today, which are basically ninja pirates that are also terrorists and assholes. And I did not put him in, and that's my fault, because normally I check that on a Sunday morning, and obviously Eddie Lacy playing on Thursday, I skipped over that. So when you see the 24-point given to Kenfield, that's why. And it's not enough to influence the outcome of the game, but it's points he should have had he actually been able to manage his team and put Mike Wallace in, because of the 3 players he has, Carson Palmer, which can't play in a flex spot, Mike Wallace, and Gary Barnidge, who is a tight end, obviously he would have put in Wallace. So that's the justification for that. I'm going to put that in after this and go from there. Back to the game. Charlie, congratulations. What a game for you. 36.8 from Rogers. Isaiah Crowell, who I've never really liked, but is doing fairly well this series. Top 12, which means he's definitely RB1 territory. Julio Jones is monster, as you should expect, 28 points. Gronk is slowly crawling back from obscurity. He's got 2 touchdowns in the last 2 games. I think he's going to continue to do well now that Brady is back. Michael Crabtree is another guy that I have disdain for because when I've had him on my team, he sucked. But now he's the number 8 wide receiver, and he's doing really well for him. And then TJ Yeldon, who kind of had a real rough week. He's been really up or down, and then this was a down week for him. But it didn't really matter because you combine all the points from the players I just mentioned, plus the 20 from the Ravens. You're doing well, Charlie. So it's a good win for you. You're now 4-3, riding a 2-game winning streak. You're first in the Pacific, and this gives Kenfield another loss for him. He's tied for second in the Pacific Conference. And then behind him, as we mentioned, is Vanny and Noel at 2-5. Let's move on to the last game, Tyler and Larson.
It wasn't pretty, but it was close. And I'm sure Tyler will take the win at 114.6 points. But, man, and he only had 1 player in single digits on his starting roster. So that's what kind of happens in fantasy. If you don't have some guys that kind of do really well from week to week, and you just kind of muddle along, you get some low scores. But if you do consistently, you're probably going to get some wins out of it. Blake Bortles, I don't think I'm sure that Tyler's hoping Roethlisberger comes back sooner than later, because Bortles, after being kind of a fantasy star last year, even though he threw a bunch of interceptions, he put up a bunch of yards. And this year he's not really doing either except for the interception part. Christine Michael just got shut down by the Cardinals defense. Well, actually, I'd say he more so got shut down by his own terrible offensive line. Amari Cooper, Mike, as you alluded to with Michael Crabtree, is just getting, they're putting blanket coverage on him every week, and it's allowing Michael Crabtree to have good games, but it's also then just killing Amari Cooper's production. Delaney Walker, quietly, once again, had a good week. Edelman kind of ticked back up after a few bad weeks. Marvin Jones seems to kind of go back and forth. My guess is now, since Golden Tate appears to not be in Stafford's doghouse as much, Marvin Jones will probably stick around this 13-point click. Vikings defense, 16 points, but I would have thought, maybe a little bit more going up against rookie Carson Wentz. They did force some turnovers, but they were just on the field too long, and also they suffered from that special teams kick return. Carlos Santos, good, 10 points out of your kicker. And now to Larson's side. I know he's had a decent fantasy season, but Marcus Mariota, he's decent. I guess you can kind of say he's plug and play, but you kind of hope for more than 23.4 points out of your quarterback. I should speak, with how badly Russell Wilson's been doing recently. But then, it's just Jacquizz Rodgers out of nowhere with 35 points, who's, I guess, in a bit of irony, Larson is using a player who's put in because the starting running back was injured, because Larson's having to use that because his starting running backs have all been injured. Cameron Meredith.
Sweet irony.
Cameron Meredith, again, just there's not much you can do with Matt Barkley in at quarterback. Cutler's back this week, so I don't know if that's going to change anything. Martellus Bennett has kind of faded as we've seen Gronk come back into the fold. Jarvis Landry, he seems like a kind of player that should get 25 points a week, but he just hasn't been doing that. James White, I've had him before, but Mike, you've talked about this before, where it seems like the only running back you want to have with New England is LeGarrette Blount, because he's going to actually get the run, the runs. That sounds gross. That did sound gross. Justin Tucker, good week from him, but as I said, this was just a tough matchup where I think a lot of guys, if they had to play a lot of players, they probably would prefer not to, and both guys have significant injuries with Ben Roethlisberger out for a while, LaShawn McCoy probably still out for a while, Theo Riddick is dead. Just kidding, he's not dead. And then, of course, AP being out for our season at least. So, he's hanging in there at 4-3, but Larson, he's doing a great job managing what he has, and good luck to both these guys going forward. But I do want to say I have mad respect for how Larson's managing his roster, as well as his growing family these days. So that's I can't imagine that's easy.
Yeah, seriously, mad props. I have one child, and boy, let me tell you, that is a time-consuming thing. So I have two, so young. Well done, Larson. All right, let's go to the previews of Week 8. We're getting into playoff contention here. Playoffs? We're going into that kind of area where it's going to be every game becomes that much more critical, and a loss could sink your season in these final couple games for the ultra competitive divisions like the Atlantic Conference, where you bet 3 teams at 5-2. They need to be very careful with each other, especially as they play intra-division games. Looking at Brandon and Courtney's game as the first matchup of the week, it's difficult to say what's going to happen, and it's not because I'm indecisive or any other reason. It's not that I just, normally I could say, oh, this team's going to win or that. There are 5 questionable players on Courtney's team. There are 3 questionable and a doubtful on Brandon's team. So I don't even know what the roster is going to look like, let alone who's going to be projected to win. I will say that the rosters that they currently have set up are fairly even. They have Brandon at a 20-point line, which I think is quite generous. But I think that just looking at everything, I'm going to have to give the win to Brandon, simply because both of them have been on the uptick lately, points-wise. But overall, Brandon is putting up more points per week than she is. And I think because of that, she's just going to struggle. I mean, she's scoring less than 100. Let me put it this way. Total points for Brandon, 994. Total points for Courtney, 853. So that differential over 7 weeks, you can kind of see how Brandon's really just putting his foot on the pedal and just running forward. I guess if you're putting your foot on your pedal, you wouldn't be running. I guess if you so he put his foot on the pedal and he's charging forward in an all-new 2017 Dodge Charger. Now let's get some ad money for that. So that's it. I think Brandon, the official GMC, meh. All right, so that's it. I think that Brandon's going to win this game. Let's go on to the match of the century. Me versus Noel. 2 teams with losing records. Noel, I think we both should comment on this, but I'm going to let you take the lead on this one.
Yes. Well, I would imagine we'll both be looking at the injury report as it goes along. And did you just make a change to your team, or am I just seeing things?
No,
Okay.
I have not made any changes.
I must be loopy again. Oh my gosh.
Weird.
I'm not sure that I know that Rex Ryan's teams tend to, he takes great pride in shutting down Brady, which by that, I mean, he doesn't put up as big of numbers when he beats him. But, I don't agree with, I guess, the advantage given there to Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson hasn't done it. Yes, New Orleans defense is terrible, but if any of you have been watching Seattle's offense, their offensive line can't do anything. Like what happened last year was, Wilson would drop back if there was nothing there, he could kind of create. Now he drops back and he's immediately trying to create, and that's just there's no time for anything. So that's been kind of rough to watch. We'll see Lamar Miller. I think they only put him back into the game because Alfred Blue gave up that huge fumble that the Broncos recovered, thank God, and kind of just iced the game for him. And then, from there, I think it's a bunch of question marks. Well, not a bunch of question marks. I don't know. It's a toss-up between, I guess, Jordy Nelson and Emmanuel Sanders. Both can fill it up, but both can disappoint. I think the huge advantage here is Greg Olsen. And then from there, this is where I kind of would imagine you might do some tinkering, Mike, especially since they're both questionable. Geno Smith will not be starting because apparently he's torn his ACL, so Fitzpatrick, who's pissed off, is back in the game, but Marshall is questionable. Jamison Crowder, I don't know. I think a lot of his points are coming off the special teams, which is good, but at the same time, the Cincinnati defense seems to have awakened a little bit. At least I'm hoping, since I have my team. And then I think it's going to be a tough matchup against Dallas because, much to Ben's delight, the Cowboys are just going to run Ezekiel Elliott a lot. But even if we were to go right now, I think the line on this is way off. I just honestly don't know who to call in this game because I think a lot of my projections are fairly inflated by F and Tard. But what do you think, Michael?
I think that I think you're correct, but I think you're going to win, and here's why. I have 5 questionable players, and I, showing my hand, I don't know who to start because the core of my massive binge buying spree in the auction of getting all the wide receivers I could handle, none of them have really been producing, so I don't know what to do in this case, especially since the other big purchase I made, Jamal Charles, is just like, fuck you. I'm not going to do anything this year. So that I'm a little bit stuck. And I think that because of that, my hands are tied here. I don't think I'm going to be able to make any moves that are really going to be substantial enough for me to pull off a victory this week. I think you're going to get win number 3. It's going to deal me loss number 5. That's just the way that I see it right now. So, by the way, before I started the previews, I meant to say the bye weeks this week because it's such a big week this week and next. If you have players on Baltimore, LA, Miami, New York Giants, Pittsburgh, or San Francisco, they are on bye. So don't start them. You're not going to get any points. So that's it. I think that the line is a bit inflated. I think you'll probably win by more like 10 to 15 points, possibly 20, not by 30. But unless, Ty Montgomery goes off or who knows. Greg Olson's facing the number 1 Arizona defense against tight end, so maybe not him. But maybe the Eagles go nuts on Dallas again, or at Dallas in general. You never know. So I'm going to call this for you, though I think that no, I'm just going to call it for you. Congratulations, Noel. Good win. All right, let's move on to the next one. Molly and Vanessa are facing each other in the preview of the what do we call it? Oh, my God, I'm having a brain fart.
Bowl.
Thank you. Badonka, thank God. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Noel. God, my brain is like, nope. You can stay, but I'm going. And my brain just leaves my head. So looking at this game, I think that Molly has a lot going for her. Granted, she has a line of 16.9, but that's because Antonio Brown is still represented on Vanessa's starting lineup, and obviously he's not going to play. So I think that this one, looking at all of their team here, I really like both of these teams. Cam Newton, David Johnson, Latavius Murray, Gio Bernard. These are all guys that maybe not Murray and Bernard, but I really like the first two name-wise. Mike Evans come on big time, especially since your old friend from UNC days is out, Noel, for the season. And then that's on Molly's team. On Vanessa's team, Matt Ryan's number 2. DeMarco Murray's number 2. Antonio Brown not playing. Broncos number 5. I don't even know why I mentioned him. So she's got a lot to like here, and a lot of that could be explosive upside. DeMarco Murray could just go off, as he's prone to do. He did it against Oakland, got 41 points, did it against Houston, got 35, did it against Miami, got 34, and then last week against Indy, got 36. So I think that this game is going to be won by whoever has the breakout game by their stud, whether it's David Johnson, DeMarco Murray, or Cam Newton or Matt Ryan. Whichever one of those 4, let's call it, has a huge game, is going to be the one that I'm going to call to win. This one's too close to call at this point. It's a toss-up. I won't pick a team this week, but I think that whoever wins, like I said, it's going to be a blowout, and it's going to be from one of their stud players. Let's take a peek at Josh and Larson. What do you think, Noel?
This one, I think this is another one that's probably too close to call. Not that the kicker is going to make up a ton of points, but as of now, Larson has yet to start a kicker, but who cares? Stupid kickers, except for this week. Yay. But, I think, actually looking at it, I know that he picked up Chris Thompson, but I think you still have to give, as old as he is, they're going to feed Frank Gore the ball. So that's going to do a fair amount. But then you have DeAndre Hopkins, who, even though Detroit's defense is worse, I don't think that he's going to have a breakout game until they get someone else going in the receiving game for the Texans. So that might be another rough week. With the Chargers situation, it kind of seems like from week to week there's one player that seems to vulture all the touchdowns around the goal line. It might be Antonio Gates. It might be Hunter Henry. It might be Melvin Gordon. So if that can happen this week, that can be big for Josh's team here. But other than that, I know they're the Seahawks defense, but I mean, Drew Brees, and not only that, this is kind of where it can be rough. It's a tough balancing act here for Josh. If Drew Brees does super well, then he'll get very little out of his defense. If his defense does very well, that means Drew Brees probably did shitty. And that, that can kind of limit your score. You might get kind of stuck in some sort of weird, 140, 150 is the most you can get, just because if one player starts doing too much, then you'll start losing for somebody else. But, I know I said it's too close to call, but I do like Josh in this game just because I think poor Larson has just been depleted by injuries, that he's having to manage this roster the best he can with players that you wouldn't think you would have to turn to, but it's fantasy, and he's just been snake bitten with injuries, and he's having to do it, and he's doing a good job, but I think it might be a bit too much for him to overcome once again this week.
I agree with everything you just said. I thought it's like you took the words out of my brain, you ripped them out, and you threw them in the microphone, and now soon it'll be online for the world to hear, which is funny because I was just on SoundCloud preparing it to upload the podcast. And there are a shitload of people who follow and listen to our podcast that have nothing to do with the Mile High Champions League. It's kind of funny. It's kind of weird, too. All right, let's go on to the second to last game of the preview here. That's Ben versus Charlie. Boy, this is, I think, going to be a shootout. Listen to some of these players. Matt Stafford, Ezekiel Elliott, Ashlon Jeffrey, LeGarrette Blount. The Bills' defense, which is the number 4 defense overall, Aaron Rodgers, Julio Jones, Rob Gronkowski, Michael Crabtree. These are all playing against – they're all going to be in the mix this week. They're all going to be baked into the cake of whoever gets to eat the delicious cake of victory. Stafford against Rodgers, that should be good. Rodgers hasn't been doing that well this year, but he's got to get pissed off enough to earn the right to be called an elite quarterback again. And against the 29th ranked Atlanta defense, this might be the week. Isaiah Crowell versus Ezekiel Elliott, I think, is an easy one. That goes to Elliott. However, as we're talking about, Isaiah Crowell has been a real big sleeper this week, or this season. He's putting up 22 points a week. That's pretty damn good. Julio Jones, number 1 wide receiver, I think that's lights out. Same thing with Gronk. He's not the number 1 wide receiver, but he's well on his way to being top 5. If he keeps up the pace he's been on, because you think about it, he had 3 weeks of zeros, 1 week where I had 1 reception and 2 points. That was the last week when the whole, every Patriots quarterback was injured. But now that Brady's back, he's got 17, 31, and 19. That's why Charlie bought him. He's basically like a good wide receiver, too, and you can plug him in the tight end position. I think he's going to do very well, especially since you're saying, Noel, Rex Ryan and the Bills are going to want to shut down the Patriots, and Belichick knows that. And Belichick, I think, is going to just give him as many middle fingers as he can by putting up as many points as he can. And a lot of that's going to be it's going to be fun to watch that play out, because if it's a passing game, it's going to go to likely go to Gronk, some of the passes, which will favor Charlie. And if he does the ground game, he's going to go with LeGarrette Blount, which is on Ben's team. So I think this is going to be a high-scoring game between the two of them. However, looking at things the way they are, I'm going to think that Ben is going to take the win this week and shut down Charlie's 2-game winning streak. And if he can hold off against the lovers, Molly and Josh, whose wedding is next year. I don't know why I said that. I was just trying to, I guess, qualify why I mentioned their lovers, because I guess for all the times I've mentioned that they're fiancés. And when you took the words out of my head, Noel, I think you took all of my IQ points except for 2. And that's just what's keeping me breathing. That's using one of them. And then my mouth running off is the second one. So, all right, that's it with this one. I think Ben's going to win this game. Sorry, Chuck. Let's go on to the last one, Kenfield and Tyler.
All right. Just to look at it off the bat, this looks like a blowout. But again, Kenfield just doesn't have as much time to get to his roster because he's on deployment, and they're projecting U.S. power in the Pacific right now. So keep doing that, Kenfield. We all love you. But this could be, I think a tough week. And you look at, Odell Beckham Jr. out. That's huge for Kenfield. Eddie Lacy is on the IR, and he's that probably means he's done for our fantasy year. So Kenfield's have to change that out. Steelers defense, who after 2 dominant weeks got just lit up by Miami. They're on a bye week, so he's going to have to replace that. Chandler Catanzaro, who we'll say comically had a bad week last week between having a field goal blocked and then donking one off of the upright, which would have iced the game. But there's some stuff to like from Kenfield's team here. Duke Johnson in a PPR league he's a solid start at running back. He doesn't run the ball a lot, but he catches balls out the backfield. Phillip Rivers had a decent game against the Broncos last time. We'll see if they get a little more pissed off playing at home this time. Jimmy Graham was kind of quiet last week. I expect that to be I expect a big game from Jimmy Graham. It's bounce back. Plus, he's playing against his old team in New Orleans, who basically told him to get the fuck out because they didn't want to pay him. Doug Baldwin, he's been fairly quiet all season. You expect something more from him. But then on to Tyler's team here. Blake Bortles up against a Tennessee defense that seems fairly middle of the pack. Christine Michael, again, another candidate to bounce back. Mark Cooper up against a bad Tampa Bay defense should, in theory, live up to what he can do. Delaney Walker will do well. Julian Edelman, I think didn't he get shut down in the first meeting against Buffalo this year, Mike?
Yeah, it wasn't great.
I would suspect the same kind of thing. Marvin Jones could be in for a big week. Ooh, and the Vikings defense has to be just licking their chops to get after Jay Cutler in his first week back after whatever the hell he did to his thumb and missing a bunch of games. So I like Tyler in this game, but I think Kenfield, when he makes those changes and maybe finds a couple of players that can possibly get him over the top, he can be competitive, but I think it's going to be a tough hill to climb this week for Kenfield.
Agreed. All right, that is the end of the previews. Now let's go on to the poll just to touch on what we were talking about. When it comes to injuries, there's obviously a lot of folks out this week. Talk about player underperformance and outperformance for like surprise upside by Isaiah Crowell and surprising downside by a guy like Jordan Nelson. So the poll this week is, what has been the biggest hurdle for you to jump this season? The answers are none, I'm awesome, injuries, player underperformance, or bye weeks. So feel free to go online and vote if you so desire. And let's wrap it up with Huddle Up with Big Nolsky. This week we're going to do football terms, part 2, and it's all about the different parts of the football field. So let's go down here. There's 5 parts I wanted to go over here. You'll hear them talked about by the commentators, and if you're unaware of what they are, hopefully by the end of this podcast, you'll be able to say, oh, so that's why they threw it to the flat, or that's why that guy got a call for being in the neutral zone, or that's what, when the pocket's collapsing, that's what that is. So they're probably terms you're familiar with and you've heard many, many times, but just to get a little bit more inside information from football guru Big Nolsky, let's start it off here. So, Noel, what is the box?
So the box is on the defensive side of the ball. It's basically the area within, I'd say, 10 or 8 yards of the line of scrimmage. And when you have the players in the box are expected to generally stop the run. So a lot of times you'll hear, people on TV, the color commentators go, well, you see here, they're loading up the box because they don't respect the other team's ability to pass. And that's quite literally what it means, is that they're bringing extra players up into the box to stop the run or to blitz in some cases. And that makes you vulnerable to being hit over the top with passes. But if the other team can't do it, let's say in the case of, I don't know, the Bears, it can be quite effective. But when you hear the box, that's what it is. It's how many players are right around the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball. I'm sure there's more to it, but that's the basic outline of it, if you will.
Excellent. All right, now what is the flat?
The flat is basically, if you flip the sides and you're on the offensive side, it's kind of just right off the tight end and just less than 5 yards off the line of scrimmage on the other side of the ball, or other side of the line, excuse me. And the flat is often utilized. You'll hear someone say a check down or dump off, where a receiver will just kind of run a quick route out there. And if there's not something open downfield, the quarterback will just kind of go, all right, you get it. And it's not it's not exciting, but if you hear the term dink and dunk a lot, it's a good way to get 3 or 4 or 5 yards, even more than that if you got somebody who can break some tackles every time, and it's a safe throw. So whenever you say, oh, so-and-so caught one out in the flat, that's what that means. And it's a staple of the West Coast offense, which we talked about, I believe, on an earlier podcast.
Indeed, we did. All right, excellent. So that's kind of a defense thing, offense thing. Let's talk about in between. This is the one I'm sure most of you are familiar with. What's the neutral zone?
Neutral zone is that invisible line in between, otherwise known as the line of scrimmage, in between the defense and the offense, basically where the ball is, where they have to stay apart. And if you hear neutral zone infraction, it usually means the defense jumped off. And when they hear that, well, neutral zone infraction, this has been an update. You, as a defensive player, you used to be able to jump over the line of scrimmage and get back. And even if the offensive player jumped, it would always be a false start, which means the offensive player moved before the ball was snapped. But now they've made it that if you jump into the neutral zone and the offensive player does something, it's now a neutral zone infraction. However, if you line up across the line of scrimmage, or if you're across the line of scrimmage when the ball is snapped, in the line of, in the neutral zone or past the neutral zone, then that'll be called an offsides penalty. So that one, fairly basic stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's move a little bit out towards, let's stay on the offensive side of the ball, actually. This is another one that is often quoted because it's like, oh, the pocket collapsed around Simeon, or you can see the passer was out of the pocket and it's therefore not intentional grounding. What is the pocket? Kind of giving it away, but what is the pocket?
The pocket is basically behind the line of scrimmage between the two tackles, and I'd say, well, let's be conservative and say 10 yards behind. And the idea is the pocket is where the quarterback can operate safely with the offensive lineman providing him a pocket, if you will, in which to throw the ball. And the reason why I wanted to bring up the depth of the pocket is because as an offensive lineman, if you're a tackle, you can let your guy get past you. That's just fine. However, you want to make sure you push him out and get depth. We probably hear that talked about as well. So what I'm saying that is you can let him get past you, but you're going to keep him outside. You're not going to let him come back to the quarterback. You're going to keep pushing him back, keep pushing him back, keep pushing him back. And then the other part of it is with the tackle or with the guards in the center is those guys, they just want to keep the player in front of them. They don't want to let him move too much because I know Vanessa saw this. We all saw this probably, but we all remember when Tom Brady had his ACL snapped when a player rolled up on him. And, it's not that was the thing that made quarterbacks wary about having players, especially on the interior, collapse on them. They've always been worried about that. But when players get up close like that, it affects their footwork. It affects their timing. So a clean pocket is essential to a successful passer. Not essential, but if you don't have a clean pocket and you're not a great quarterback, you're probably going to have some pretty bad games.
Okay, and then the final one, the sticks. What are those?
The sticks are pretty much literally what you think they are. It's the sticks that the line judges hold up to signify the first downs. So in the NFL, they have them on both sides of the field. They're 10 yards apart, and sometimes you'll hear, you want to defend the sticks, and that means basically keep the other team from getting the first down. We talked about this as well with the passing routes, a sticks route, which is it's basically a post route to the outside, but when they break off their route, they run towards the sticks, which are the first down markers, and which are sticks. Sorry, that was kind of boring.
Literally, they are sticks, but that is an important thing because especially when you need to get out of bounds, like when you're in a 2-minute drill, it's the last 2 minutes of the second quarter or the fourth quarter, and time is running out and you need that time left on the clock. So a lot of times you hear, oh, he's thrown to the sticks. And that's meant to say like Noel's saying, the halfback's running out, doing a sweep, and he's meant to catch the ball and fall out of bounds. Or they're going a little bit more bold and they're throwing the ball downfield. and the guys, maybe not downfield, but closer to the first down marker. And as soon as they catch it, they go out of bounds. And you that's how Alex Smith plays. You just dink and dunk down the field and dissect the defense and just keep time on the clock so you can hopefully win. So that is it. That's kind of it in a nutshell. We had a pretty quick podcast here tonight, Noel. We were not as loopy, but more retarded than usual. I'm going to go ahead and say that because we're special. It happens. So, all right. Thank you, Noel. Is there anything else you wanted to address tonight, or shall we sign off from Fantasyland?
I think we are good to sign off from Fantasyland.
Okay, then let's call it quits for tonight. Thank you so much for listening. Good luck to everyone this week. And Noel, what do you have to say?
Go Broncos!